What if I told you that the person who saves your life might be someone you walk past every single day without even seeing them? This is the true story of a man who lost everything in one night, and the janitor who became his miracle. A woman the world had forgotten, a man too proud to ask for help, and one impossible moment that changed both of their lives forever. Stay with me, because by the end of this story, you'll never look at the people around you the same way again. You'll understand why sometimes our greatest blessings come wrapped in the most unexpected packages. And you might just realize that someone in your life right now is waiting for you to finally see them. This is a story about second chances, hidden heroes, and the kind of love that saves us when we've given up on ourselves. Let me take you back to that night in Chicago, when everything fell apart. Welcome to Voice of Granny. While you are here, please hit the subscribe button and comment your view on the story and where you are watching from. Sometimes life has a way of humbling us when we least expect it. Let me tell you about David Mitchell, a man who thought he had the world figured out. David was the kind of person you'd see in magazines. Successful, confident, the CEO of Horizon Tech in downtown Chicago, a company he'd built from nothing. For 12 years, he'd worked day and night, sacrificing everything for his dream. His office sat on the 40th floor, with windows so large you could see the entire city spread out below like a sea of lights and possibilities. But on this particular night, all those lights felt like they were mocking him. It started at 9 p.m. David was alone in his office, preparing for the biggest deal of his life. Tomorrow morning, he was supposed to sign a contract worth $10 billion. $10 billion. Can you imagine? It would make Horizon Tech one of the most powerful companies in the country. Everything he'd worked for was finally coming together. Then his computer screen flickered. Just once. A red warning appeared in the corner. Then another. And another. Within minutes, every screen in his office was flashing with alerts. Error messages. System failures. Data disappearing right before his eyes. David's heart started racing. He clicked frantically, trying to understand what was happening, but it was like watching a building collapse in slow motion. His company's entire network was crashing. Customer information, financial records, everything that made Horizon Tech valuable was vanishing into thin air. Someone had attacked them. A cyber attack so sophisticated that his entire security team couldn't stop it. David grabbed his phone and called his head of technology. No answer. He called his security chief. Voicemail. Everyone had gone home for the night, completely unaware that their company was dying. He slammed his fist on the desk, his breath coming in short gasps. This can't be happening, he whispered to himself. Not now. Not when I'm so close. Outside his windows, Chicago glowed bright and busy. People were having dinner, watching movies, living their lives. They had no idea that up here, on the 40th floor, a man's entire world was crumbling. The city doesn't care, David thought bitterly. It just keeps moving, whether you're winning or losing. He sent his team home hours ago. He couldn't bear to see the fear in their eyes. Now he wished anyone was here with him. The silence in that huge office felt suffocating. Just him and the blinking screens showing him everything he was about to lose. That's when he heard footsteps in the hallway. Slow, steady footsteps, followed by the quiet squeak of wheels rolling across the floor. David looked up, confused. Who could possibly be here at this hour? A woman appeared at his door, pushing a cleaning cart. She wore a simple gray uniform, her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked to be in her mid-30s, with kind eyes that widened in surprise when she saw him sitting there in the dark, surrounded by flashing red screens. "Oh, I'm so sorry, sir," she said softly, her voice carrying a gentle accent. "I didn't know anyone was still here. I can come back later." David let out a bitter laugh. "Don't worry about it. You're not interrupting anything except me watching my life fall apart." The woman hesitated at the doorway. She looked at him, then at the screens behind him, her expression changing from surprise to concern. "Are you okay?" she asked. "Okay." David shook his head. "My company just got destroyed. Everything I've built for 12 years is gone. So no, I'm not okay." Most people would have apologized and left. But this woman didn't. Instead, she took a small step forward, her eyes studying the screens more carefully. "That looks like a cyber attack," she said quietly. "A pretty serious one." David turned to look at her, genuinely shocked. "What did you say?" "The patterns on your screen," she continued, pointing. "That's not a random crash. Someone's inside your system, stealing and deleting as they go." "How do you know that?" David asked, standing up now, fully focused on her. She met his eyes with a calm, steady gaze. Because I used to do this kind of work. Before life took me in a different direction. David stared at this woman in a cleaning uniform who was telling him things his own expensive security team couldn't figure out. It seemed impossible. Crazy even. But there was something in her voice, a quiet confidence that made him want to believe her. "What's your name?" he asked. "Maria," she replied. "Maria Santos." He looked at her for a long moment. His engineers were gone. His experts had failed. His company was dying, and he had nothing left to lose. Sometimes, my friends, desperation makes us willing to trust the most unlikely people. "Can you help me?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Maria set down her cleaning supplies and walked into his office. "I can try," she said simply. "But I'll need access to your systems." David stepped aside and gestured to his computer. "It's all yours." As Maria sat down at his desk and her fingers touched the keyboard, something shifted in that office. Neither of them knew it yet, but this moment, this impossible meeting between a desperate CEO and a janitor with a hidden past, was about to change both of their lives forever. Because sometimes, the people who can save us aren't the ones we expect. They're the ones we've been overlooking all along. Let me tell you something about Maria Santos that David didn't know yet. 5 years ago, she was one of the best cybersecurity specialists in the country. She worked for a major firm in California, protecting banks and corporations from hackers. She was brilliant, respected, and on her way to the top. But then her husband got sick. Cancer. Aggressive and cruel. Maria left everything behind to take care of him, moving back to Chicago where her family could help. She spent 2 years watching the man she loved fade away, holding his hand through chemotherapy, sleeping in hospital chairs, praying for miracles that never came. When he passed, Maria was left with mountains of medical debt and a resume that looked like it had a giant gap in it. The tech world moves fast. 2 years away might as well be 20. Companies wanted someone current, someone without baggage. So Maria took whatever work she could find. Cleaning offices at night. Invisible work for invisible people. But here's what those companies didn't understand. Just because Maria was pushing a mop didn't mean her mind had forgotten how to code. Every night, as she cleaned those empty offices, she noticed things. Security flaws. Weak passwords written on sticky notes. Computers left unlocked. She saw all the mistakes that could destroy a company, and she said nothing because nobody asked her opinion. Nobody saw her at all. Until tonight. Until David Mitchell, desperate and alone, actually looked at her and listened. Now Maria sat at his computer, her fingers flying across the keyboard like she'd never stopped doing this work. David watched in amazement as lines of code filled the screen, as she navigated through his system with absolute confidence. "Your backup servers," she said without looking up. "Are they connected to your main network?" "No," David answered. "They're completely separate." "Why?" For the first time since the attack started, Maria smiled. "That's your miracle right there. Whoever attacked you didn't touch your backups. That means we can rebuild." Hope flickered in David's chest, a feeling he thought was gone forever. "Are you serious? We can actually fix this." "We can try," Maria said. "But I need complete access. No restrictions. And I need you to trust me." David pulled out his master access card, the one that opened every door and every system in the building. He handed it to her without hesitation. "You've got it. Don't make me regret this." She glanced up at him, and for a brief moment he saw something flash in her eyes. Not arrogance. Something stronger. Determination. "I won't," she promised. "But when this works, remember who helped you tonight." "I will," David said. And he meant it. Together, they took the elevator down to the basement, to the server room that David called the heart of Horizon Tech. The air was cold down there, filled with the hum of machines and blinking lights. Maria walked between the tall racks of equipment like a surgeon examining a patient. "We're going to bring it back to life," she said. "But I need time. Maybe 6 hours. And I need you to trust me completely." "Done," David replied. For once in his life, he wasn't the one in control, and somehow that felt okay. As Maria worked, David watched her. She was focused, tireless, completely absorbed in what she was doing. Every keystroke was deliberate. Every command purposeful. Hours passed. They drank cold coffee. They barely spoke. But there was something comforting about not being alone, about having someone fighting beside him when everything seemed lost. Around 3 a.m, something changed. The red alerts on the monitors started to disappear. One by one, systems began coming back online. Files that had been deleted were reappearing. The chaos was turning into order. "Wait," David breathed, afraid to believe it. "Is this really happening?" Maria leaned back in her chair, exhaustion and satisfaction mixing on her face. "Your company is breathing again, Mr. Mitchell. It just needed someone who refused to give up on it." David felt tears sting his eyes. He didn't cry. He never cried. But in that moment, relief washed over him so powerfully that he couldn't help it. "How do I thank you?" he asked, his voice shaking. "You don't," Maria said softly. "You just remember this feeling. And maybe you fix what's broken outside the computers too." As dawn began to creep through the small basement windows, the system flashed a final message: restoration complete. David stared at those words in silence. His company was saved. The deal could still happen. Everything he'd worked for was still possible. But somehow, that wasn't what mattered most anymore. He turned to Maria, this woman who had appeared out of nowhere when he needed help most desperately. "No," he said. We're alive again. Together." When his employees started arriving that morning, they found something strange. Their CEO was sitting in the basement server room with a woman in a cleaning uniform, both of them drinking coffee and smiling like old friends, surrounded by glowing screens showing a system that had miraculously come back from the dead. They didn't know that this woman had just saved the entire company. They didn't know that she'd changed their boss's life forever. They just saw a janitor and wondered why she was there. But David saw her, really saw her, and he was about to make sure everyone else did too. Because sometimes, my friends, the most extraordinary people are the ones we walk past every single day without noticing. And it takes almost losing everything to finally open our eyes. The next morning, David called a meeting with his senior team. The boardroom filled with confused executives, all wondering why they'd been summoned so urgently. They'd heard rumors that something had happened overnight, but nobody knew the full story. David stood at the head of the table, and beside him stood Maria. She was still wearing her gray uniform, her hands clasped nervously in front of her. You could see the uncertainty in her eyes. She didn't belong in rooms like this, and she knew it. "I want to introduce someone," David began, his voice steady and strong. "This is Maria Santos. Last night, while everyone was at home, our company was attacked. Someone tried to destroy us from the inside. And this woman right here, she saved us." The room went silent. People looked at each other in confusion. Some looked at Maria with skepticism. "A janitor? Save the company?" Thomas Reed, David's chief technology officer, crossed his arms. He was a tall man with an expensive suit and an expression that said he wasn't impressed. "You're telling us that the cleaning lady fixed what our entire IT department couldn't handle?" David didn't blink. "That's exactly what I'm telling you. And starting today, Maria is going to lead our new cybersecurity division. She reports directly to me." The murmurs around the table grew louder. Thomas's face turned red. "This is insane, David. You're putting our entire company's security in the hands of someone we don't even know." "I know what I saw," David replied firmly. "I know she worked through the night to save this company when no one else could. That's all I need to know. This discussion is over." He walked out before anyone could argue further, and Maria followed him, her head held high despite the hostile stares burning into her back. In the hallway, Thomas caught up with them. "You're making a huge mistake," he said in a low, angry voice. "You don't know anything about her background, her credentials, nothing. This could destroy us." David turned slowly. "What could destroy us is not recognizing talent when it saves our lives. Maria has earned this position. End of story." He walked away, leaving Thomas standing there, jaw clenched, watching them go. That afternoon, Maria returned to Horizon Tech, but this time, everything was different. She had a new badge, new access, a new office. The same people who used to ignore her when she pushed her cleaning cart now stepped aside when she walked down the hallway. Some nodded respectfully. Others whispered behind her back. But Maria kept her head high. She knew what she was capable of. Now she just had to prove it to everyone else. David gave her space to work, and work she did. For weeks, Maria rebuilt Horizon Tech's security from the ground up. She implemented new protections, trained a small team of loyal engineers, and slowly earned the respect of those willing to give her a chance. The company's recovery became news. Investors returned. The big deal was back on track. Everything seemed to be falling into place. But Maria couldn't shake a feeling that something was wrong. Late one night, as she reviewed the system logs, she noticed something that made her blood run cold. Strange activity. Unusual access patterns. Someone was still poking around inside their network, testing defenses, looking for weaknesses. Someone inside the company was still working against them. She immediately went to David's office. He was there late, as usual, reviewing reports. When he saw her face, he knew it was serious. "What's wrong?" he asked. Maria closed the door behind her and pulled up her laptop. "Someone inside Horizon Tech is still accessing our systems illegally. These signatures match the original attack. Whoever tried to destroy us the first time, they're still here." David's expression hardened. "You're saying we have a traitor?" "I can't prove it yet," Maria admitted. "But yes. And whoever it is, they know our systems too well." For the next several days, Maria worked in secret, tracing every suspicious login, every strange data transfer. She set up monitoring systems that tracked activity without alerting the person behind it. She barely slept, barely ate, driven by the need to protect the company and the man who had believed in her. And then finally she found it. A pattern in the access logs. Late-night logins from an administrative account. Deleted files. Encrypted messages sent to external servers. When she cross-referenced the timestamps and user credentials, one name appeared again and again. Thomas Reed. The man who had questioned her from the beginning. The man who seemed so angry about her promotion. He was the one who had opened the door for the original attack. He was the enemy within. Maria sat back in her chair, her heart pounding. She'd suspected Thomas didn't like her, but this was betrayal on a level she hadn't imagined. She gathered all the evidence onto a secure drive and walked straight to David's office. It was late evening. Most people had gone home. The office was quiet, just the hum of computers and the distant sound of traffic outside. "David," she said, her voice tense. "We need to talk. Now." He looked up from his work, saw her expression, and immediately gave her his full attention. "What did you find?" She plugged the drive into his computer. The screen filled with logs, timestamps, access records. Thomas has been using his credentials to access restricted data. He did it the night of the attack, and he's been doing it ever since. He's the one who let them in. He's the one who tried to destroy us. David stared at the evidence in complete silence. His face went pale. "Thomas? I've worked with him for 8 years. He helped me build this company." "I'm sorry," Maria said softly, "but the evidence is clear. He's been working against you." David stood up and walked to the window, his hands shaking. "If this gets out, we'll lose everything we just recovered. The board will panic. Investors will run." Maria nodded. "Then we don't let it get out yet. We let him think he's still safe. Give me a few more days to find out who he's working for." David turned to look at her, and in that moment, she saw both trust and fear in his eyes. "This is dangerous, Maria. If he finds out you're investigating him." She smiled faintly. "Taking risks is what got me here in the first place. You trusted me once. Trust me again." He took a deep breath and nodded. "Okay, but please be careful." What neither of them knew was that Thomas Reed had already noticed someone was watching him, and he was preparing to do whatever it took to protect himself. The game had changed. The danger was no longer just about computer systems. It was personal now, and someone was going to get hurt before this was over. Over the next few days, Maria played the most dangerous game of her life. She set up fake databases filled with valuable-looking information, then watched to see if Thomas would take the bait. She monitored his every move, careful not to let him know he was being watched. She barely left the office. Dark circles formed under her eyes. David would bring her coffee and food, worried about her, but she waved him off. "I'm fine," she'd say. "We're close. I can feel it." Then one night, as she was preparing to leave, her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. She looked at the screen and felt her heart skip a beat. "Stop digging or you'll regret it." Someone knew. Someone was threatening her. Maria forwarded the message to David immediately. Within seconds, her phone rang. His voice was sharp with concern. "Where are you? Are you safe?" "I'm still at the office," she said, trying to sound calmer than she felt. "But this proves we're getting close. They're scared. They're threatening you, Maria. We should call the police." "Not yet," she said firmly. "If we bring in the authorities now, whoever's behind this will disappear. We need to catch them in the act." The next morning, Maria arrived at work early. As she walked through the parking garage, something caught her eye. A small black device attached under her car. She crouched down to look at it, and her stomach dropped. A GPS tracker. Someone had been following her movements. They knew where she lived, where she went, everything. She carefully removed it and brought it straight to David's office. When he saw it, his face went white. This has gone too far. These people know where you live. Which means they're desperate, Maria replied. Let's use that. That evening, they set a trap. Maria stayed late at her desk, pretending to work on a file filled with fake financial data. David waited in his darkened office, watching through the glass walls. The tension was almost unbearable. At 11:30 p.m., the security cameras flickered and went dark for just a moment. Someone had disabled them. Then Thomas Reed walked into Maria's office, trying to look casual, but she could see the tension in his shoulders. "Maria," he said, his voice too friendly. "Still working late? You're going to burn yourself out." "Just finishing up," she replied, not turning around. "What brings you here?" "Oh, just forgot something in my office. Saw your light on." He moved closer, his eyes fixed on her computer screen. "You've really made quite the impression around here." David's new favorite. "I'm just doing my job," Maria said calmly. "Your job," Thomas repeated, and now his voice had an edge to it. "Interesting how your job seems to involve investigating people who were here long before you." He reached toward her computer. That's when David stepped out of the shadows, turning on the lights. "It's over, Thomas." Thomas froze. His eyes darted between them, and Maria could see him calculating, trying to figure out how much they knew. "You think you understand what's happening here?" Thomas said, his voice turning bitter. "You have no idea. Horizon Tech made deals years ago with people who don't care what burns as long as they make money. I'm not the villain here. I'm just the one who got caught." "You're working for Titan Systems," Maria said quietly, watching his reaction. "They paid you to destroy us from the inside, so they could buy us for cheap." Thomas's silence told them everything. "Why?" David asked, and you could hear the pain in his voice. "I trusted you. We built this company together." Thomas laughed, but it was an empty, hollow sound. "You built this company, David. I was just your employee. You got rich while I got a salary. Titan offered me $2 million and a vice president position. What would you have done?" "I would have had integrity," David said quietly. "Integrity doesn't pay medical bills," Thomas shot back. "It doesn't send kids to college. You can afford principles, David. I couldn't." Maria felt a flicker of sympathy despite everything. She understood financial desperation better than anyone. But understanding wasn't the same as excusing. "Security is on their way," David said. "You can explain all of this to them." Thomas's face changed. For a moment, he looked panicked. Then he shoved past David and ran for the door. David started to chase him, but Maria grabbed his arm. "Let him go," she said. "We have all the evidence we need. He can't run far enough to escape this." But Thomas knew the building too well. He reached the stairwell and disappeared. By the time security arrived, he was gone, and all the security camera footage had been wiped. Maria and David stood in the empty office, the weight of betrayal heavy between them. "I should have seen it," David said quietly. "I worked with him for 8 years and never noticed." "People are good at hiding when they need to be," Maria replied. "But we found the truth. That's what matters." She pulled up her laptop one more time and showed David the trail she'd uncovered. The money transfers, the encrypted emails, the connection to Titan Systems. Everything led back to them. "This is bigger than Thomas," she said. "Titan has been trying to take over Horizon Tech for years. They've been paying people inside our company, maybe even some of our investors. They want to destroy us from within." David ran his hand through his hair, exhausted. "So what do we do now?" Maria closed her laptop and looked him straight in the eye. "We expose them. All of them. But we do it right, with lawyers and evidence and the media on our side." "That could destroy us," David said. "The scandal, the publicity. Or it could save us," Maria countered. "The truth always does, eventually." Outside, the Chicago skyline sparkled in the darkness. Somewhere out there, Thomas Reed was running. Somewhere, the people at Titan Systems thought they'd won. But in this office, 2 people who had found each other at the worst possible moment were about to prove them all wrong. Because sometimes, my friends, the truth isn't just about exposing the bad guys. It's about showing the world what you're really made of when everything is on the line. The next 2 weeks were the hardest of David's life, harder even than the night of the attack. Maria had gathered every piece of evidence they had and gave it to David's lawyers. Together, they built a case not just against Thomas Reed, but against Titan Systems for corporate espionage and attempted hostile takeover. David had to make a choice. He could keep everything quiet protect Horizon Tech's reputation, and hope nobody ever found out about the betrayal. Or he could go public with the truth and risk everything. Maria sat with him the night before they had to decide. "Whatever you choose," she said softly, "I'm with you. But I'll tell you what I believe. The truth might hurt for a while, but lies hurt forever." David looked at this woman who had walked into his life by accident, who had saved his company, who had become the most important person in his world. "You're right," he said. "We tell the truth." The next morning, they called a press conference. The boardroom filled with reporters, cameras, flashing lights. David stood at the podium with Maria beside him, and he told the entire story. The attack, the betrayal, Thomas Reed's involvement, Titan Systems' conspiracy to destroy them. The media exploded. Headlines everywhere. But something unexpected happened. Instead of running away, customers and investors rallied around Horizon Tech. People admired the courage it took to expose corruption. They respected David's honesty. They were inspired by Maria's story, a janitor who became a cybersecurity expert and saved $1 billion company. Within days, Thomas Reed was arrested trying to board a flight to Mexico. He confessed to everything, giving authorities enough evidence to launch a federal investigation into Titan Systems. Their executives were brought down one by one. Horizon Tech didn't just survive. It thrived. The company's value doubled. New clients came flooding in. David's big deal went through, bigger than ever. But the most important changes happened quietly, in moments nobody else saw. 3 months after everything settled down, David had the old server room where Maria first saved the company renovated into something special. He brought her down to see it, and when she walked through the door, she stopped in her tracks. "The Santos Innovation Center," she read aloud, seeing her name on the wall. Tears filled her eyes. "David, you didn't have to do this." "Yes, I did," he said softly. "This company exists because of you. I exist because of you. You didn't just fix our computers, Maria. You reminded me what really matters." She turned to him, wiping her eyes. "And what's that?" "People," he said simply. "Not money. Not power. People who care enough to fight for something, even when they have every reason to walk away." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Maria's breath caught in her throat. "You once told me that you just wanted to fix what was broken," David continued, his voice shaking slightly. "Well, I was broken, Maria. My whole life was broken. And you fixed it, not with code or computers, but just by being who you are." He opened the box. A simple, beautiful ring sparkled in the light. "I don't want to lose you," David said. "Not as my colleague, not as my friend. I want you to stay because you choose to stay. Because you want to build a life with me." Maria looked at him, this man who had been arrogant and lost when she first met him, who had become humble and found through everything they'd endured together. "I chose this a long time ago," she said, smiling through her tears. "You just took a while to notice." David laughed, slipping the ring onto her finger. "Then I'm finally paying attention." They stood there in the center they'd built together, surrounded by the hum of machines and the glow of screens, and they knew that this was just the beginning of something beautiful. The story of Horizon Tech's recovery spread far beyond Chicago. It became more than just a business story. It became a reminder that sometimes the people who can change our lives are right in front of us, doing work we don't even notice. It became proof that redemption is possible, that trust matters, and that courage isn't about never being afraid. It's about showing up anyway. Maria Santos, who once cleaned offices invisible and overlooked, became one of the most respected voices in cybersecurity. She spoke at conferences, helped other companies protect themselves, and never forgot where she came from. She kept her old uniform hanging in her office as a reminder that worth isn't determined by a job title. David Mitchell learned to see people instead of just employees. He learned that vulnerability isn't weakness, that asking for help is strength, and that the best partnerships are built on respect, not hierarchy. On their wedding day, 6 months later, Maria wore a simple white dress and David wore a suit. They stood in a small chapel with their closest friends and family. And when the officiant asked if they had anything they wanted to say to each other, Maria spoke first. "You saw me when I was invisible," she said, her voice steady and strong. "You trusted me when you had no reason to. You gave me a second chance when the world had forgotten I existed. That's the kind of love that changes everything." David squeezed her hands, his eyes bright with emotion. "You taught me that miracles aren't things that happen to us. They're people who refuse to give up on us. You were my miracle, Maria, and I promise to spend the rest of my life being worthy of that." As they walked out of that chapel together, hand in hand, starting a new life, the sun was setting over Chicago. The same city that had witnessed David's lowest moment was now witnessing his greatest joy. And somewhere out there, someone else was having their worst day. Someone else was feeling lost and broken and alone. But maybe, just maybe, they'd remember this story. They'd remember that the people who seem least important might be the very ones who save us. They'd remember that second chances are real. And they'd remember that even in our darkest moments, hope is just one encounter away. Because that's what this story is really about, my friends. It's not about computers or companies or corporate espionage. It's about the moment when two people at the absolute end of themselves found each other and realized that together, they could build something stronger than either of them could alone. It's about looking at the people around us, really looking, and seeing their value even when the world has decided they don't matter. It's about believing that tomorrow can be better than today, even when today feels impossible. That's the miracle. Not the technology. Not the money. Not the success. The miracle is that we can save each other, if we're brave enough to let ourselves be seen and humble enough to ask for help. David and Maria proved that. And they lived the rest of their lives making sure other people knew it too. If this story touched your heart, I hope you'll carry it with you. I hope the next time you see someone society has overlooked, you'll remember Maria. And I hope the next time you're at your breaking point, you'll remember that sometimes salvation comes in the most unexpected packages. Because the truth is, we're all one bad day away from needing someone to see us. And we're all one moment of kindness away from being someone's miracle. That's the story I wanted to share with you today. Thank you for listening.